Hey everybody, this is the fourth here, and in this video I will be showing you how the Effector plugin works in FL Studio. Effector was created with live performance in mind, but that doesn't mean you can't use it in your production. In fact, it's a really simple way to get some cool automated effects going on in your songs. So let's take a look at how it works. So the first things you should be aware about are the input and the output gain knobs. So what these do is the input knob changes the volume or the amount of signal that is going into the effector before effects. And the output gain knob changes the final output volume of the effector, so that'll be after the effects. And you have two different kind of meters here. This one will show you the input gain and this one will show you the output gain. So I'm going to put on distortion and turn the bypass off so that you can hear the changing volume to the input versus changing it to the output. So you can see as I turn the input gain down, the distortion becomes less harsh, whereas if I just change the output gain, the distortion will stay the same, but the final volume will be lowered. And then here's the original sound. So next you have the X and Y grid and the knobs. So what the knobs do is they change the X and Y values independently, or you can just click in the grid and change them both at the same time. And what these do will be different depending on the effect you are using, because each effect has different parameters that are routed to the X and the Y parameters. And below the X and the Y knobs, you have the bypass button. And by default, it's on, which has the red light, but you can click it to turn it off, and you can right-click to automate it. And what it does is, if it's on, that means that the input signal is completely bypassing the whatever effect is selected. So since it's on, you'll hear just the raw drum beat. And if I turn it off, you'll hear the distorted drum beat. And if you click anywhere in the XY grid, it'll automatically turn the bypass off. And that's what makes this so good for, simple automated effects. So you could have your song going on, and just do that kind of stuff, which is a lot easier than, if you have the Fruity Fast Distortion plugin on, it's a lot easier than manually, automating the wet amount to completely on to completely off and all that. You can just record this while the song's playing. Just record and click in whatever. Now below the bypass button, you have the dry and the wet knob. And what this does is it changes the wet output amount in comparison to the dry output. So right now, and by default, it's all the way to the right, which means it's 100% wet. So I'm going to turn off the bypass so you can hear the distortion. But as I turn it to the left, it'll become less wet and more dry. So you'll hear more of the original input sound the further left I am, and less of the affected output. And if I have it completely to the left, it'll be just the input signal. Now over here you have your LFO settings, and these work a little bit differently depending on the effect you're using. So I'll get more into that later. But for right now, let's get started on what the plugins are and what the X and the Y do for each plugin. So first off, we have our distortion. And the X parameter changes the amount of the distortion, which I'll let you hear now. And the Y parameter is the tone control, which emphasizes a certain frequency range of the sound before the distortion is added. So at lower values, it'll be the lower frequencies which are emphasized, and at higher values, it'll be the higher frequencies. So I'll let you hear that. Second is the lo-fi effect, which is a bit reducing effect, so like a bit crusher. And the X mod changes the sample rate, so further to the left you'll have the higher sample rate and it'll sound more like the original signal, and further to the right the sample rate will be lower and it'll sound a lot more crushed. So I'll let you hear what that sounds like. Okay, and the Y parameter is a low pass cut. So in this example, you'll be able to hear a bit more fuzz at higher Y values than you will at lower ones. And third, we have our flanger, where the X parameter is the depth and the Y parameter is the feedback. And I'll let you hear what the depth sounds like first. And now the feedback. And then together. The fourth effect is the phaser, which the X and the Y parameters do the same thing as they do in the flanger, but the phaser effect is a little bit different than the flanger. So I'll let you hear how that sounds. So first off, X being the depth. And then Y as the feedback. And then together. Now with both the flanger and the phaser, the LFO can be especially important, but I'll come back to that later. So the fifth effect is the filter. And the filter effect works the way that filter effects on certain DJ equipment might work. So the X parameter is the filter cutoff, and the filter changes between a low pass filter at lower cutoff frequencies and a high pass filter at the higher cutoff frequencies. And 50% is the changeover between the low pass and the high pass. So you'll hear if I turn the bypass off, there will be pretty much just the original signal. But as I go to the left, it'll turn into a low pass filter and the frequency will get lower. And if I go to the right, it'll turn into a high pass filter and the cutoff will get higher. So I'll let you hear that. And for the filter, the Y parameter selects the amount of resonance the filter will have. So at higher values, you'll have more resonance, and at lower values, you'll have less resonance. So I'll let you hear what just the resonance sounds like. You can hear the cutoff frequency is kind of emphasized a bit more with the resonance. Now the sixth plugin we have is a delay. And the delay is the first plugin that uses the LFO settings in a different way. So instead of being an LFO of the X and the Y parameter, the LFO timing selects the delay time. So I'll show you what that sounds like. And these LFO settings are tempo based, and 1/1 is 1 beat. So then you have 3/4 of a beat, half of a beat, 3/8, 1/4, and 1/8. Or you can go to longer delay times and have it be 2 beats, 4 beats, or 8 beats. So okay. And what's cool about this is the LFO settings have this tempo knob here, which allow you to get the delay to be even faster than 1/8. And it allows you to change to values in between these set speeds. So I'm going to keep it on 3/4 and show you how it sounds to adjust this knob. So you can get some pretty cool delay effects like that to mix things up. Now what the X and the Y do on the delay is the X changes the feedback amount. So you'll hear as I go up, you'll hear more delay going on. And if I go back down, you'll hear less. So and the Y value changes the filter of the wet delay sound. And this filter works the same way as the filter effect does. And by that I mean if you go to lower Y values, it'll be a low pass filter, and at higher values, it'll be a high pass filter. So I'll let you hear that. Now the seventh plugin we have is the Reverb. And for the Reverb effect, the X value changes the feedback amount. So I'll let you hear that. And then the manual says that the Y mod changes the wet value, which would be the reverb amount. But to me, it really sounds like it changes the either the high cutoff or the high frequency dampening. So I might be wrong, but here's what it sounds like anyway. So to me, that really sounds like it's changing the either the high cut or the high dampening. But anyway, next up we have the stereo. The stereo effect does two things. It can be a simple panning effect, or it can create kind of a stereo delayed kind of effect. So if you have the Y parameter all the way up, it'll be just the basic panning. And left will be left panned, right will be right panned. So I'll let you hear that. But if you take the Y value down, you'll hear a delayed signal start to come in the opposite speaker than the direction in which it is panned. So I'll show you that now. Okay, now the ninth effect is the trans effect, or the trancer. And what this does is it creates the, kind of sidechained pumping effect you'll find in a lot of house music. And the way you get that is by changing the Y value. If the Y value is all the way up, you'll have pretty much just the raw signal. And if you take it down, you'll have a lot more dipping in the effect. So I'll show you how that sounds now. And the X parameter changes the release time. So if I have the X further to the left, you'll hear it release a lot more quickly than it will if I have it to the right. So I'll show you what that sounds like. And this is another effect where the LFO settings do something different than just a basic XY LFO. And what they do here is kind of the same idea. They'll select the time period in which this pumping effect is happening. So you'll hear if I play it now, instead of being every beat, it'll be every 2 beats that this is happening. And I can change it by just selecting different values. Or by adjusting this tempo knob here. So the next effect, and possibly my favorite effect of the Effector, is the grain effect. And the X and the Y parameter don't do anything for the grain effect. But again, the LFO settings will change the time. Because what the grain does is it acts as a re-trigger effect. So the re-trigger period is defined by these values. So you can hear if I play the drum beat with it set to repeat every beat, it will do just that. So you can change the speed by selecting through the different values here. And what I really like about this effect is the ability to have a smooth re-trigger speed up. So, if you're doing a build up, instead of just having this basic kind of speed up. You can speed it up, a lot more smoothly, like this. So I've set up a few examples of uses for this effect in the playlist, and I'll show you how they work now. So I've automated the bypass in the playlist just so that I don't have to press it myself and I can just focus on automating the tempo knob. And because this is a pretty common effect in hardstyle music, I've based these examples around hardstyle. So I'll just show you another kick buildup right here. So you can see that it just allowed me to do a really, smoother speeding build-up rather than just your solid blocky speed up. With the kick, that same kind of effect can be heard in noise controllers faster and farther. So, if you ever wanted to know how to do that, that's how you can do that with the Effector. And then it's also really common to do on, maybe a synth lead or a vocal in hardstyle. So I'll show you that real quick with this vocal sample. And this one I've automated all ahead of time so that I don't have to do anything. But you can watch the parameters change and hear how it affects the sound.
We need a beat.
And you can hear that the vocal speeding up enough turned it into kind of its own waveform, which I recorded in Edison and then resampled right here. And, that's really common, especially in older hardstyle. But yeah. So that's why I really like the grain effect in Effector. Okay. Now after the grain, we have the VOX, the vocal effect. And what that does is it applies a formant filter to your sound. And the X parameter is the vowel sound that the formant filter creates. And the Y value is the throat size. So I'll show you first the vowel sound. So you can hear it's changing between like A, E, I, O, U types of sounds. And if I change the Y parameter, it changes the throat size. So lower values make a bigger sounding throat so that the vowels will be deeper, and higher makes a smaller throat so the vowels will be more shallow. So I'll show you that. Now the last effect we have is the ring modulation effect. And what this does is it creates ring modulation to the input sound. And for this one, the Y parameter doesn't do anything, but the X parameter changes the modulator frequency. So I'll show you what that sounds like. Now, if you ever forget what the X and the Y do for any of these, you can click this arrow up here and go to Help, and that will open up the manual. So you can just come down to the Effects section, and it will tell you what all the different effects do, as well as what the X and the Y parameters change on each effect. So now I'm going to cover how the LFO works, and then after that I'll show you a few automation tips. But first let's start with the LFO. So I'm going to turn the bypass off, just so that you can hear what's happening, and I'll use the flanger. Okay, so right now the X mod and the Y mod are both in the center, which means that there's no change in the X or the Y amount caused by the LFO. Now, if I turn either knob to the right, it will mean that the LFO will change between whatever the X is set at and the X plus whatever this knob is set at. So let's say that this knob causes the X to be here. So your LFO will be changing from here down to there, like this. And I'll let you hear what that sounds like. And then you can change the timing of the LFO just by selecting the different values here. And you can also speed it up smoothly by turning this knob. So I'll show you how that all sounds. And this is actually pretty useful, not just for automated effects, but because the other flangers and phasers in FL Studio don't allow you to set tempo values that I'm aware of. So this is just a really quick, easy way to get your flanger or your phaser modulating at the same speed as your tempo. So you can hear if I do it one by one. And you can change the Y mod too, and it'll affect both of them. And of course, you can change the shape of your LFO down here. So you can hear right now. Let me change back to the saw. You can see the LFO is the sine wave. But now if I change it to the saw, and then the square, it just changes the shape of the LFO. Okay, so I've covered all of the different parameters and effects in Effector, but before I finish this up, I want to explain a little bit how automation works with this. Of course, you can record while you do anything, or you can right-click to automate most things, but you can't right-click to automate the base LFO rate or to change between the effects. And I don't know whether you're meant to be able to automate between them or not, but you can by doing the same thing you might do for automating a VST parameter. So if I'm changing this right now, I can go up to Tools, Less Tweaked, and Create Automation Clip. Now I've already done this, and that's what this automation clip is here. you can see FX Effector Moderate Envelope. And so that's just allowed me to automate this. And then it works with this as well. If you click between these, I can do Tools, Last Tweaked, Create Automation Clip, and you can see Effector Kind Envelope. And I'll play both of these real quick just so you can see it changing between the different effects and LFO speeds. So here we go. So again, I don't know if you're intended to be able to do that, but you can do that. And yeah, that is the Effector Effects Module plugin for FL Studio. Thanks for watching my tutorial video. I hope you found it to be helpful. If you want to learn more, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can watch new videos as soon as I upload them. After that, check out the Beat School website. I'll have the link in the description. All my tutorials are organized on the site so that you can easily find what you need by browsing through the different categories. There are also a ton of awesome resources to help you in every aspect of music production. And if you want to help support me, you can buy any of my sample packs, preset packs, or project files for only $5 or less. This gets you some great sounds for a great price and allows me to spend more time making these tutorials and working on the website. Thanks again for watching my video, and have a great day.